In this lesson, we're going to cover a more intermediate filtering option, contextual filters. Contextual filters look at the context of the page being viewed. Any number of elements may be considered in a contextual filter, such as something about the URL path that the user happens to be on your site, the type of user that is actually engaging with your site, when that user last logged into the site if they are authenticated, when the content that they're looking at was created, and much more. The clearest example of how contextual filters work is with an out-of-the-box view for taxonomy. This comes with Drupal when you install it, and it's already set up. A lot of our content is already making use of the terms that we've set up in the vocabularies in our taxonomy. So if I scroll down here, we have all of these articles on the home page, and they have tags. These are terms, and if I click on any one of these terms, such as baked goods, I'm now taken to a display of all of the content with that specific term selected. So if I scroll down here on baked goods, I see a few articles that are available. We also added a vocabulary to our recipes content for food sensitivities. So if I go into one of these recipes and I click gluten-free, and if I scroll down here, you'll see a number of nodes that have been given the term gluten-free. Some of these nodes are recipes, and one of them happens to be an article. At the very top of the page, you'll also see that there's a paragraph here. And this paragraph is actually set up in the taxonomy term itself. If I click Edit here, I'm going to edit the taxonomy term, not any of the articles listed below. So you can see that happening here. If I go back and view this term page, again, I see all of the content that has been created that uses that term. So this is a view that's actually displaying, and this view is using contextual filters. The contextual filter that it's using is coming from the URL path for the page that I'm on. And let's take a look at that up here. So here's the URL path that I'm on. It says taxonomy, term, and then it uses a number here. This is the term ID. Every taxonomy term on your site is going to have a unique ID for that specific term. So this one happens to be term number 8. Now we're going to go ahead and go to the view and take a look at how that's working. So if I mouse over the area where the content is, I get this little contextual link here, which I can click on, and then I can choose Edit View. And this will take me to the view, which is available in my list of views. I can also get there under Structure, scroll down to Views, and then look for the taxonomy view. So taxonomy term, and edit. If I scroll down here into the preview area, you'll see that there are no results. Now I happen to know that the contextual filter that I was looking at previously was for the term with the ID 8. That was the gluten-free taxonomy term. I know that because we looked at the URL together just before we came over here. So in here, under preview with contextual filters, I'm going to add 8, and then I'll update the preview. And now if I scroll down, it will actually show me all of the results for that particular taxonomy term because of the contextual filter that I placed into the preview area. So how is the view actually making this happen? I'm going to scroll up here into the view area itself, and there's this tab here for advanced, which is collapsed by default because most of your views will not use the advanced settings. But we'll go ahead and open this up. And you'll see that the very first item here is contextual filters. The filter that has been added here is content has taxonomy term ID. So if I were adding this for the first time, I would click on add. And then if I knew that I wanted to go with a taxonomy term, I could type in the beginnings of the word that I'm looking for. And now this filter becomes available to me in the list. So I could check that off and start setting what I need to make this work the way that I want. I'm going to cancel this here. I want to point out that I'm using the contextual filter here rather than adding the filter under filter criteria. The reason that I'm doing this is because if I add the filter under filter criteria, then what I need to do is set this particular display to filter to a specific taxonomy term. If I did that, then I would have to create a new display for every single one of the terms on my site, which doesn't make a lot of sense. I know that I want this particular display to be available for each and every taxonomy term that's on the site, and I don't want to have to create an individual display for each and every one because that would be a lot of overhead and maintenance. So rather than adding a filter for term ID 8, what I'm going to do is add a contextual filter, and that's going to be content has taxonomy term ID. And if we click on this, now I have a few settings that I can choose here. If there are no results, then I don't want there to be a page available. So there's probably not a taxonomy term 203 on our demo site because we haven't built in enough content yet. So if somebody went to the URL taxonomy/term/203, the result that they would get would be page not found. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more here, and you'll see this override title option here that's checked off. The help text here is very useful. What this is saying is use %1 for the first argument and %2 for the second argument. This continues on. You could use %3 for the third argument and so on and so forth. So what is the argument here? The argument is what's listed under our contextual filters. So right now we only have one argument, and that argument is taxonomy term ID. So what this is saying is for the title of this page, rather than displaying none or displaying taxonomy term, take the term itself and display that. I'm going to scroll down here a little bit more and just show you that there are more options available. So we're going to go ahead and apply this to all displays. And actually, in this case, I'm going to cancel it because we haven't made a change. If I scroll down here, show you 8 is the term ID that we're looking for. The title that it's giving us is gluten-free because gluten-free is the actual term, the actual text term for the term ID 8. So that %1 is rewriting itself as gluten-free. And it's also saying, okay, here is all of the content that uses the taxonomy term with the term ID 8. Let's scroll back up here. And I also want to show you something else that's happening with this contextual filter. Under page settings, you have path, and you'll see that the path here is taxonomy term %. If I click on this to edit it, we get some really nice help text here. This help text tells us that we can use the % symbol to represent values that are used for the contextual filters. So when I showed you that the path for that gluten-free page was taxonomy term 8, what's happening here is the view is saying display on the path taxonomy term 8 this particular view with the content that has the term ID 8. I'll cancel this because I don't actually want to edit this. And then the other thing that I want to show you here is the header. So we know that views are lists of content. And what we've been seeing up until now is that your filters will then show all of the content for that specific item that you're looking for. So in this case, a typical view, let me scroll down here, in the preview, would start with the content in this area. It wouldn't actually start with the paragraph that comes from the term page itself. So that's being brought in using a token. We're going to scroll up here to the view and take a look at the header area here, which is looking for a global rendered entity, and that's the taxonomy term that's being used by the contextual filter. I'm going to click on that, and we'll look at the replacement patterns here. The replacement pattern here is that we're making use of, if I scroll down here, is this exclamation point 1. So it's looking for the term ID from our contextual filter. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this. And we don't need to save this view because if we made any changes, we actually don't want them to take effect. We're going to go back to the site and go back to this gluten-free term page here. So we see the term, we see the content from the specific taxonomy term, and we see the results of the view. If I go to another term, we'll see the same thing. So now we'll go to nut-free. And we have the same effect, but with different content. One of the best ways to learn how to work with advanced functionality in views, such as contextual filters, is to duplicate a view that came with core or a contributed module, and then play around with the view to see what changes. If we go over to structure and then all the way down to views, we have our list of views available here. If I know that I want to play with contextual filters, and I want to do so by playing with taxonomy terms, I'll scroll down to taxonomy term here, and I will choose duplicate under the operations. This will then allow me to rename it. I can duplicate it. The only really important thing to do before you make a duplicate and start playing with your view is to make sure that you change the path. The reason that I changed the path here is because if I have two views that are using the same path, I have a conflict. One view may be telling the site to behave one way when these specific parameters that are set up in that view are actually in play, and another view might be saying something else. If the two conflict and they both have the same path, then the site has to make a choice as to which elements it's going to use and which ones it's going to reject. So the results may be unpredictable and most likely will not be the results that you want. So it's very important before you save your view that you change your path if you have a page display so that there aren't those conflicts.